All right. How's everyone doing today? This is a new playlist here for this channel, and welcome to my channel. This is primarily an educational channel, and these videos will be educational and maybe not too consistent, but I just wanted to talk about some sports stuff. I guess this playlist will be called News is Sports Stories. And I've just been kind of reminded of all this from looking at the Houston Duke game last night in the Final Four. Duke was up by 14 with about 8 minutes to go, and things just fell apart for Duke. And Houston ended up winning by three. Um, and it just was obvious that Houston was very much more experienced, and Duke had a lot of young guys out there, and they just didn't make plays when they needed to. Houston did, and these are guys that just don't like losing, and they don't ever give up, and they scrap and they play super hard, and that kind of uh, the guys from Duke, I think, just were a little bit inexperienced. So they had a great season, but they're going home now. Houston takes on um, Florida tomorrow, and but this all reminds me of a game in 1983 that Houston was involved in, and it was the same Final Four game, Houston versus Louisville, and that was a highly anticipated matchup. I think that from the time I was growing up, that was kind of like that was the game. That was the probably the biggest touted, highest touted game that I can remember. And I remember that day I had a track meet, and so I couldn't watch it. Everybody was talking about it after it was over, but eventually I watched it on YouTube, and it is actually quite inspiring. But it was somewhat similar to the game last night. Houston and Louisville were like the two most athletic teams that were out there. The game, I think Billy Packer, who was commentating with Gary Bender, it was like he mentioned at least two or three times how Dr. James Naismith would have never conceived of the game being played above the rim the way it was. That these guys were playing it, 90 years after he invented the game, he would have been shocked to see that it was being played above the rim like that. And those two teams, I mean, Louisville had uh, two elite guards, Lancaster Gordon and Milt Wagner. They also had the McRae brothers, Scooter and Rodney McRae. Rodney McRae ended up playing in the NBA. Scooter probably did too. I don't know. Wagner and Gordon both, I think, did play in the NBA briefly. Milt Wagner, his kid Dewan Wagner, I believe played in the NBA too. I'm not sure exactly about all that, but they had Billy Thompson. Uh, I think that was his freshman year. He ends up like flubbing a dunk, a breakaway dunk toward the end of the game. It was just in stark contrast with Houston. So anyway, the game was pretty explosive, back and forth, high athletics. Houston was stacked. They had been to the Final Four the year before and lost to North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. The team, 82 team with Jordan's freshman year, with Sam Perkins and Jimmy Black and James Worthy. And so in 83, they entered, and Louisville had Denny Crum as the coach. Houston had Guy Lewis, who had like kind of the guy that had incredible amounts of wins, but had never really gotten into the Final Four. But then the last 2 years he got there, and um, Houston was stacked. They had Akeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, two guys who I probably were like first ballot Hall of Famers. Definite, they both won a title, NBA title together at Houston in 1995, I think. And these guys were are both like top 75 all-time NBA players. And neither one of them was the leading scorer of the team. The leading scorer of the team was Michael Young, who was this 6'7" left-handed guy who could score, could put the ball in the basket. And I believe he's the father of Ice Trey Young here from the Atlanta Hawks now. I'm not sure about that either, but I think that's true. And then they had Larry Mishaw, Mr. Mean. He was like the enforcer, and he was the only senior they had on the team. Alvin Franklin, who was a uh, kind of a gritty point guard, quick and could handle the ball. He could score when he needed to, but he really didn't need to on this team. And then off the bench, they brought Benny Anders. And they had a couple of white guys, Reed Geddes, who could really shoot, and Rose. I can't remember his Leon, I don't know what his first name was. But he was pretty, he'd like to mix it up a little bit. But Benny Anders was like the poor man's Clyde Drexler. He was exactly like Clyde Drexler, but he was just not quite as good. A little bit shorter, had the same haircut almost. They looked the same. And one Benny Anders wore 32 and Drexler wore 22. And so the game was like back and forth. You got to watch it. I'll put it in the link. Especially just watch the last 13 minutes. So the game's back and forth, above the rim, high, just kind of like high quality game. But then Larry Mishaw, uh, on an offensive foul, it's kind of like Drexler hit him with a hot pass, and he managed to gather the pass, but just kind of like couldn't hold up, and he got an offensive foul, and fouled out with like 13 minutes to go. Houston was up. Houston was down six, and their only senior, kind of their team leader, their enforcer, fouled out. So it was looking bad for Houston, and then Louisville scored again, and so Louisville's up 8, 57-49, and then it just like a switch was flipped. Benny Anders checked in for Larry Mishaw, and Billy Packer was very concerned about the whole thing. Like, I don't know if Houston's going to be able to handle this or whatever. And it was like Akeem Olajuwon got every rebound that Louisville missed. Olajuwon got like every rebound. Outlet pass to Franklin. They're running. Okay, right away. Um, I don't know who threw the pass, but it was an alley-oop pass. Michael Young, right-handed dunk. This guy's left-handed. He grabs the ball with a right hand and just slams it with the right hand. Next time down, they get a steal, or maybe it was another Olajuwon rebound. Drexler gets the ball on the right wing, takes it in, another dunk with authority. Then, you know, uh, there's a few other things that happen. Then Anders hits Drexler on the break, and he goes up with one hand, switches to two hands, and dunks it again. It was just like a complete onslaught. I think Houston went on like a 22-1 run, and they were just Olajuwon. I think he ended up with like 20. He had a 20-20 game, something like that. But the thing that I'll always remember when I watch it, or that inspires me, is the play of Benny Anders, because this is a guy who, again, like, I don't think he ever played in the NBA. I have no idea whatever happened to him, but he only averaged like 5.5 points a game. And I think he ended up having like 13 in that game. But at one point, he got the steal, and he dribbled it. He had to go maybe a little more than half the court to get to the rim. Took a sidestep to the right. Billy Packard shows it to us, and he just slammed it so hard. It was uh it's awesome. And like you can just see Benny Anders, he's like so in the zone. Like he's running back after scoring the basket and he's just like on cloud nine. He's like he I don't say it euphoria because they're still concentrated on the game and they're still trying to win, but he's just like this is the biggest day of his life and he's like coming through in spades. The guy was I mean, I'm sure he got married and had kids or whatever, but that had to be the greatest day of his life uh, to watch him do that. And I don't know how many dunks he had in the game, but that one, and then he had another one like toward the end, which was like a breakaway. Um, so anyway, in the last 13 minutes of the game, Houston had 10 dunks. Olajuwon had four, Drexler had two, Anders had two, and Michael Young had two. Michael Young also almost had another one where he just took the ball to the basket from the left hand side and just tried to dunk it with authority and end up getting fouled and didn't make the dunk. But 10 dunks in the last third of the game. And, they had several dunks before that. Louisville had zero, including the Billy Thompson breakaway dunk that he lost control of the ball. Tried to go up with one hand, lost control of the ball, and kind of just flubbed it. But if you want to watch a team just kind of like seize the momentum. Like when the chips were down, their one of their team leaders, fouls out of the game with 13 minutes to go, and things are looking bleak. They go down eight, and they just turn it on, and they just blitzed Louisville. And I mean, Louisville was a powerhouse. Denny Crum had won the title in 1980 and again in 86. They were always in the Final Four, it seemed like, and they always had great athletes and just like uh, they played assist at that time when Crum was the coach, and Houston ended up winning 94-81, I believe, and ended up I think that really took something out of them though, because then they ended up having to play North Carolina State, who played this Cinderella story, Derek Wittenberg, Sidney Lowe, Lorenzo Charles, and Jim Valvano as the coach. And Houston kind of, it was kind of a denouement or something. It was Houston couldn't rally, couldn't get it together the way that they had. I think that Louisville game took a lot, and that was another part of it. It was the game was played in Albuquerque, and so it was at altitude. They showed Louisville sucking oxygen on a number of different occasions, and at one point they showed Michael Young just like wiped out on the court. Um, so I think that might have had something to do with it. At that time, I happened to really like North Carolina State because I had watched them in the ACC tournament and they unexpectedly won, and then they got shipped out west. I think they were the 5 seed, and I liked the way they played. Um, I didn't think they had any chance of like getting to the championship, but Houston, I hope this is the seventh time that Houston's been to the finals, and they're going to have their hands full with Florida. But it'd be nice to see them win one once in a while. 7 times in the Final Four, and they haven't won one. They went a couple times when they had Elvin Hayes back in the '60s, late '60s. I think they played one against UCLA, and then they had that huge game in the Astrodome when UCLA came into town. And I don't remember. This is before my time, but this is when they did have Elvin Hayes. And I think Houston actually won that game, but I'm not sure about that. But they never did win the title. They went to the Final Four twice, and then they went to the Final Four 3 times under Guy Lewis. and made the finals twice, but lost first to they lost to North Carolina, I think, in '82, and then they lost to North Carolina State in '83, and then they lost to Georgetown in '84. Um, and But those are some great teams. The Phi Slamma Jamma is what they called them. And if you're young, you probably, maybe have seen clips, but that was kind of a great age, at least for me, to be watching basketball. And I don't know if I think I had a VCR when back then. If you know what those are, those are things that you record the TV. But I never ever got to watch that game until um, you know, more recently in the last, 10 or 15 years. And it's a pretty inspiring game to watch, especially to watch Benny Anders, because everybody, like, when I remember, we were all, I was on the basketball team too, and we were all like, we loved Houston, and we all loved Benny Anders because he could jump out of the gym and he played above the rim, and he was a great dunker. But we knew that he wasn't that good, especially like when you compare him to Clyde Drexler, who was basically his who started ahead of him. But everybody loved him and what kind of wanted him. They both kind of had a little bit of a semi Jerry curl haircut, and um, they were just totally cool. And it was great to see that in retrospect, just how Benny Anders was just like um, in the zone that day. Um, so that must have been one of the greatest days of his life. I kind of get emotional thinking about it because you practice and you play so long to get to that, and then when you actually are performing on the stage and you got this like effortless effort going on. So anyway, just wanted to talk about that briefly, and hope you enjoy my new segment called News's Sports Stories. And thanks for tuning in today. Have a great day.